do is stay away, get away from the situation. You could get into big trouble if you ever used a gun, to even defend yourself if you had a way of getting away from the person. You didn't have to stay there and deal with the person. And most of the time in a car, you don't have to stay in one place. You can drive and get away from the situation. Another thing is to report aggressive drivers to the authorities by providing a vehicle description, license number, location, and direction of the vehicle. So that's what we were talking about earlier. You know, you can pick up the telephone if you have a cell phone. You can talk to the person who takes those calls. What is it, 311 or?
311 is a non-emergency, 911 is emergency.
311 is a non-emergency number. And I think the Highway Patrol has a number too. And I don't know what that number is, but there is a number for the Highway Patrol.
I believe that one's 211, but not hospital.
211 maybe? Okay. So anyway, those are some possibilities, and I would just say we want you to take the high road. We don't want you to create more road rage in a situation. Do you guys have some comments about this situation? What would you like to say? Anything you're concerned about? Do you worry about this in Las Vegas? Do you worry about running into people like this?
Only the tourists. They're crazy. They rent cars and they don't know where they're going.
Mm-hmm.
That's a real hazard.
Well, that's a good point. There are a lot of people that are tourists. There are a lot of people here that probably half the people that come here are from California. They may not know where the turnoff is, and they're going really slowly because they're trying to look at where they're supposed to turn, or looking for a particular organization or club or building or casino or whatever. And so they may be traveling at a rate of speed that's not quite what they should be doing. But I know that the police here are very concerned that tourists are treated properly and courteously. I mean, our lifeblood in Las Vegas is tourism. We want people here to be treated properly and politely. But you're right, tourists are going to be less likely to know where they're going. And for that reason alone, they could create hazards on the road. I feel like another problem is we have so much road construction here. We have so much street construction. There's always a big project going on somewhere, and sooner or later you're going to run into it, you know. And there's going to be narrow lanes, maybe one lane out of three, and suddenly you're now having to go very slowly and reroute yourself. I think that Las Vegas is come of age because we have now radio shows that tell about traffic. So when you're driving, you know, in LA, they've always had these, you know, there's always some kind of traffic report every 15 minutes of what's going on. And I think sometimes listening to those traffic reports is a good thing to avoid those areas. If you know that they're going to be doing construction, just avoid those areas, because it can be something that will be avoidable, and we can drive another route, and maybe it'll be faster and better. But just remember, you know, a traffic light is only going to give you 2 to 3 minutes. If you have to wait, it's only going to be 2 or 3 minutes. It's not going to be a long, long time. Anything else about road rage that you'd like to bring up?
Young drivers.
Young drivers,
Just
okay.
Experienced, so if they're going really slow, just let them have their time.
Yes, and we've passed a lot of laws to help young drivers. I think the older we get, the more likely we feel like people shouldn't be able to drive so young. But when we were 16, we felt like we could handle it. There was no problem whatsoever. In
Right.
Kansas, I remember it was 14. You could have a driver's license when you're 14. And the reason is because there are a lot of people driving tractors in the Midwest and farming and so forth. And they would be out there driving in the field, driving a tractor when they were 14, you know. So they thought, well, you can drive a tractor out in the field, you should be able to drive a car, you know. So anyway, long story short, you know, 16 is the age. Now, in most countries, it is older. People have to be older to drive. And it's a lot harder to get a driver's license in a lot of other countries. Sometimes people are required to have a course where someone actually teaches them how to drive, and they have an instructor in the car and so forth. Now, we do that somewhat in high school. We have driver's ed that helps younger drivers. And in this state, people have to have a course, which is a more of an academic course. It's about $50 that they pay for an academic course, and you can go to these courses on weekends and so forth, but all students have to do that. And then once they take that course, then they're supposed to get some practical driving time. There are many ways of doing this. One is with your parents or some other responsible adult driver who's licensed, or you can go to a driving school and have a driving school instruct you and help you. Now, it used to be that in a lot of high schools, people could have driving education cars that were donated by dealers in the community for driver's ed, and people could learn while they were in school. Not everybody has that option anymore. It doesn't seem to be available to everybody. So anyway, when you were learning how to drive, did you have a parent helping you? Did you have a parent helping you to drive, or a brother or sister or friend or what?
Brother, sister.
Good, good. When my wife came to this country, she didn't know how to drive a car. She was about 23 years old, and she didn't know how to drive. And in her country, everybody took mass transit. It was easy. A lot of people from New York that come here to the Midwest, or to the West, I mean, they don't know how to drive because they've been on the metro or some kind of a transit, mass transit, and they haven't learned how to drive. And so my wife learned how to drive on a Volkswagen straight shift, and she did very well, and it was not too hard. I didn't try to teach her. I don't expect that people who are really close to someone are the best teachers. It's probably better to have someone who's, you know, able to have a little distance so that they're not too close to the person. Because, you know, sometimes people get angry, upset, whatever, that someone's not doing the right thing. But the point is, relatives can be helpful. And with my kids, I have 2 kids, both of them, I taught how to drive. We went out and started off in the parking lot, you know, and just drove around the parking lot. And then going from the parking lot into like little side streets that were very quiet and peaceful. And then going from there into traffic, you know, and gradually, you know, they did well. It's something, though, that is a skill that we all have to learn, and it takes a while to learn. And with the new laws in Nevada, one of the things that we know is that kids are restricted when they get their license from driving at night or driving with other teenagers. And there's a period of time that they are supposed to not do that. So they're driving during the day, and they're not driving with a lot of other people. And that way they can gain more experience and control and do better and are safer drivers. And I think that there's also a certain number of miles, I think it's 50 miles, they have to document that they've driven before they can get their license too. It has to be a logbook. So those are for young drivers. Now, are there other things that can be done? Yes, I think there are a lot of things that can be done for younger drivers. But driving on the freeway can be very dangerous for a new driver. You know, one of the things that we saw very sadly, not too far from my house, was a young person who just learned how to drive pulled out on I-95. And they were going, you know, like 20 miles an hour. And here was a truck headed down 95 that was going about 60 miles an hour. Boom! Just hit that car, killed this child, and so forth, because the person wasn't going fast enough. We know that you need to have ramp speed and you need to get into the flow of traffic, you know. But this was a good example of an inexperienced driver. And we're all going to be seeing people that are learning, and they're at various stages and so forth. So that's a really good point, though. And I think what we see with a lot of teenagers is that they do not